Welcome to Time to Teach with Tammy, the podcast that gives tips, advice, and suggestions to teachers by a real teacher. So sit back and enjoy. And oh yeah, don't forget to subscribe. Welcome to episode 9 entitled Digital Tools and Resources at Your Doorstep. In today's episode, we are going to be focusing on digital tools and resources that you can use in your classroom and in general. And the idea of this is that some of these tools that I'm going to talk about today will hopefully be new ones that you're not necessarily using so that it adds to your toolbox of tools. But if some of these are ones that you're using, hopefully my experience and the way I use them will give you other ideas of how you can use them in the classroom. Our last two episodes, episodes 7 and 8, have been all about digital matters and tasks that should be done this summer to help you prepare for the fall. So the idea of today's episode, it's really doing the same thing, giving you ideas of how to use some digital tools, and maybe by dabbling and experimenting with it this summer, you'll have learned a few new digital tools by the fall time. And I actually suggested that in episode 8 that you take time this summer to learn something new. I have been doing the same thing. And I love learning new tools, and we certainly need time to do that, which is why I find the summer to be an absolute perfect time to experiment with new things because you actually have the time to do so. Whereas in the school year, it's a little bit hectic, a little bit crazy, so not always easy to find time. So let's go ahead and get started. The first digital tool that I want to tell you about, I've only recently learned of within the last couple of years, and it is an online website called Getepic. That's Getepic, getepic.com, and it has tons of online children's books. This is such a fantastic website. I cannot tell you how often I use this website. I use it so frequently. So one of the ways that I use it, and actually my primary way of using it, is for books during my read aloud time. I do a read aloud every single day, and I do believe read alouds are so important, but I do a read aloud every single day, and my read alouds will tie into whatever our theme is. I've mentioned in the past, we build our units based on understanding by design. So our overarching theme is actually going to be the enduring understanding. And within that, every week, we've kind of broken it up into essential questions that help us to get to that enduring understanding. So it's important to me that our reading, or most of our reading, is going to tie into the enduring understanding. And when you're planning, this is a side, but when you're planning your units that way, it gives you so much more freedom to find things that tie in. I find these types of units so meaningful. For example, our first unit that we begin is myself and my community, or me and my community, and it's all about who am I and where is my place in the world. There's so many different angles that you can take these enduring understandings, which is why you really want to narrow it down and figure out what are these big ideas that you're supposed to be getting from the unit. And by doing those, we can bring in maps, we can bring in the whole idea of community building inside the classroom, in the school, in your outer immediate community of your city or your town, and then your country, your continent, and then the whole entire world. So there's so much flexibility. There are different angles you can take it, but you have to keep it within the enduring understanding. So that's much easier than if you have a unit on apples. There's only so much you can do with that. That's why I love this kind of unit. But then that means that I need really good read alouds that are going to help point into the direction of the enduring understanding, read alouds that are quality read alouds and that really function in a way that my students are going to benefit from having that read aloud within that unit. So Getepic is a great way to just broaden your availability and access to read alouds that exist. You know, we're all limited to our own books that we have in our class. By own, I mean maybe yours that may have been supplied by the school, but that's whatever you have access to is also what you are limited to. So what's in your classroom, what's in the library, and it's excellent that we have other resources. Yes, there is a case to be made about actual tangible book that you can hold, and I definitely say that we need to have those experiences, and especially for students and especially for young learners. But when we're thinking about broadening what we have our access to, online digital materials do that. They just do that. As you all know by now, if you've been listening up to now, I am in Mexico, so one of the things that comes with that is our access to English books is going to be much more limited to someone who's teaching in the United States. That is the reality. So I love these digital sites that allow me access. So I use Getepic, and I will go through and I will look for books that pertain to the unit that we're on. We've also plugged in read alouds that are already suggested within our unit. We've done this as a team, and I highly suggest doing that for your unit planning, because you want to have resources and really a good list of resources that you can go to. But then every year I'll go back in and see, okay, what new books have been added, or what books are in there that maybe I completely missed the first time. So Getepic is great for that. You do need to have a school account, a school email account for you to have access. And if you do, then you can have access to Epic for free. There will be no charge. I think if you are a parent or someone else and you do not have an email, a school email, then there is a charge. I'm not quite sure what that charge is. I don't think it's a hefty charge, but there will be a charge to it. So educators, this is fantastic. Are we not always looking for those resources that are going to enhance our teaching and student learning? This is it. So I use it for read alouds. The great thing is there is an app for Epic, so you can put it on your iPad. Sometimes I will project it from the computer onto the screen, the projector screen. But of course, if you don't want your students bogged down with the text, if you just want them to focus more on the images and listening to it aside from the text, then you can do it on your iPad, which is another way I will do it as well, because then you can hold it just as if you're holding a book and you just swipe as you're turning the pages, and it just fantastic. Like I said, it has enhanced my read alouds and the access to really good read alouds, and there are really good read alouds on this site. It's not just a site with digital books because they're digital. There are very high quality books on here. Now, a couple other aspects to Epic that I love is that you can create your own library. So going back to my own units, I have my unit set up in there. So I'm finding books that go into my self unit, and as I find appropriate books, I add them to that unit. So then when I go back and I'm teaching those units, I have all of my books that I liked from Epic already saved in there. And then of course you just keep adding as you find new books that are appropriate. So it's a really great way to organize your books if you're using them in a way that I am, where I'm looking for specific books that are going to meet a particular purpose, that are going to be appropriate during a specific unit that we're working on. Then the second wonderful thing that you can do with Epic is you can actually set up your students. So you can add your students to your account. This is going to give them access within the classroom. So if they're doing reading, all of a sudden the books that they have access to is broadened. They have a much larger realm of books that they can read from. And if you're in a situation where I am, where my students are young learners, and many of the books that are going to be on here, which there are books for everyone, including I don't think adults, but I think as young as 3, I want to say. So depending on the age, if your student is not really reading, they can still listen in. So this is fantastic. And again, they can do this at the computer, and they can do this on an iPad. I have 4 student iPads and then a teacher iPad, but my table groups are typically, I like to keep them to 4. Too many I find can be distracting, so I have table groups with 4 students. So my setup with the iPads is absolutely perfect. I have enough for everyone, but it is nice that they have access to mine in case a battery dies or something funny is going on with an iPad, because we all know that happens occasionally. But it's just very nice because then they can all have a day where they can sit and listen. I don't use that function of Epic as much as I do with just using it as a read aloud, but that's actually one of my plans, is to incorporate it more. What I've typically been using the last couple of years is RazKid. So my students get the iPads once a week. I just have them kind of rotate through. So the first day of the school week is so the first day of the school week, group 1 gets it, and then the next day it goes to group 2, so on and so forth. So they have access to it once a week, which is because my particular students are very young learners. My priority for them is to develop a relationship with an actual, tangible, physical book first, and then we can incorporate the technology. So it still is incorporated, but the emphasis is that they are reading real books. So that's why they have access once a week. And that is why having them use RazKids has worked out, because they do that once a week, and that's plenty of time, and there's plenty of books on RazKids. But I am actually interested in using Epic more, so that's going to be my personal goal that I work towards next year. But it is fantastic. So I highly recommend, if you're not using Getepic.com, which also has an iPad app, look into it, explore it, and think about how you can use it in your classroom, because it has truly enhanced my classroom. So that's the first suggestion. The next digital tool I'd like to tell you about is one that is called imgur, and that is imgur. Now, this is such an awesome digital tool. It's basically awesome because it's so very simple, but what you can do with it is fantastic. So it's for uploading your pictures, but you can add filters to it, you can add text. And what this is really nice for is creating memes. So we all know that memes are all the rage right now, and there's just so much potential for how memes can be used. I have not used memes in the classroom, but as I said, every summer I like to experiment and learn new things. So this is something I've been playing around with a little bit, is making memes. I probably won't have my students do a whole lot with it, just because they are young learners, and it's just a little more complicated, I think, at the younger age. But I think this tool could definitely be used with older students. And I like to share things that can be used for young students, older students, different ages, because I realize that listeners are going to be of students of all ages. So this is something that I think is fantastic for today's day and age. Memes are everywhere. Memes are all the rage. People are seeing memes all over in social media, and what a fantastic way to bring something that is popular and used and known by students into the classroom. So it makes it very, it's something very relatable to them because they know all about it. And how better to get buy-in. So with Imgur, it's really neat and simple. You can create an account, but you don't have to. Although if you don't have to, I don't know if that you can save your work. I have an account. So when you make an account, your work saves, and you can download the picture, you can embed it into a post, you can do a link. So it's very versatile in the way that you can share your meme once you create it. So I just love it, and it's very easy. I think most people now know how to use programs to upload, so it's very similar to other programs you might have used. Just upload, and then when you have uploaded your picture, you can go into advanced settings, and then that's where you can do different things with it, like filters and text and whatnot. So it's really, really neat. But in terms of what can be done in the classroom, I think there's a lot of possibilities for how this can be used in the classroom. I'm going to share a few ways that you can use meme making in the classroom, and this is not an exhaustive list by any means. It's just a few ideas, and I'm sure there are really a limitless number of ways that you can do meme making in the classroom. But just to begin, just a few. I think one really, really great way to use it is anytime that you're working with vocabulary. So maybe this is new vocabulary for the student. It might even be vocabulary that pertains to a specific unit that you're studying. So just like you would with any kind of vocabulary when it comes to picture drawing and adding a word or a couple of words or a phrase to kind of show what that word means, the same thing can be done but with a meme. So it's the same idea, but it's done in a digital form. So I think this is such an excellent way to get students excited about learning new words, and then of course incorporating technology, which I just think will for them add a little more excitement to it, because this is the kind of stuff that they love. Another way to use memes in the classroom would be any time that you're working with books or literature. If students are doing a character study, they can create memes and find images of a character that perhaps resembles in some way the character they're studying or they're showing about, and then add text to the image to explain even more. This kind of reminds me, it's different than a meme, although similar. Right now, as I'm recording this, knowing that this, depending on when you're listening to this could be different, but right now there's been a lot of different activities on social media revolving around GIFs, like, describe yourself only using GIFs. That seems to be something that I'm seeing a lot on social media. So it really reminds me a lot of that. In fact, I am in an online book club, and every month someone is the host, and I am the host this month. And that was actually one of the activities, was describe the character using only GIFs. So in this case, it's very similar, except it's just not animated. And I feel like that was a fun way to look at a character in our book And a meme would be another way that would get the kids really engaged, but not just engaged, but really thinking about their character and how to portray their character in an accurate way, because engagement is one thing, but we also want them to be working towards those objectives too. And then another idea is you can use a meme to just any kind of announcement, or if you have a saying that you say all the time, you can add that to a meme. So this is not an exhaustive list. Those were just a few ways that you could possibly use memes in your classroom. But I'm so excited that I found this tool, Imgur. I'm going to continue playing with it this summer because I really want to start incorporating it in the fall. So that's why we're doing this, right? We want to play around with these digital tools. We want to learn about it as much as we can. And that's going to help us so that in the fall we're not trying to learn new things then when we've got a lot going on. I do also want to add with the memes, you can also do the same thing in Google Drawing. Google Drawing, everyone knows now, I think all listeners know that I'm such a huge fan of everything Google. So Google Drawing is just another way that you can do memes. So I'm not going to really get into that tool because I wanted to talk about a little bit more about some of these other ones, but maybe that can be for another episode. But definitely there are probably multiple digital tools where you can create memes, but I have just discovered Imgur, which is why I want to share with you. But of course there's Google Drawing, and I'm sure many other different tools that you can use. Okay, moving on to our next digital item. This is one that I have been playing with probably since maybe right before summer. Right before summer I started playing with it just a little bit, and it is Canva, and I believe it's canva.com if you're using it on the computer, and there is an app for it. This is for infographics and any other kind of graphics. Oh my goodness, I am in love with this digital tool. Now, I discovered this when I started podcasting. So I guess it must have been around May then when I discovered this. And, I did not know anything about producing a podcast, and of course have since learned so much. But when teaching myself how to do a podcast, I then learned, now I need cover art for my show, and I'm going to need cover art for each episode. So how do I do that? So a little bit of looking around, and there are several programs that will do this. So Canva certainly is not the only one. I'm sharing this one because it is the one that I have been using and I'm really, really enjoying. So Canva, let me spell that, Canva. There are many free options, but then there are also paid options. I try to always go with free when I can because I just think free fits so much better into my budget. So as a teacher, I'm obviously, I am not making a whole lot of money, and then being in Mexico, I'm earning pesos and I'm paying student loans. So pesos to US dollars, not good. But anyway, in any case, I try to keep my spending very limited. So I find that Canva has a lot of free options, and I have been using Canva for everything and anything. So again, I started it when I discovered that, I need cover art for my podcast show. So I found that using Canva was a great way to do that. So very easy to create. You have so many different templates to choose from, and then you can customize it. You can change pictures. You can choose from some of the free pictures. You may use your own pictures, anything that you have, and then you may add text to it. You can change the font. It is wonderful. Now I used Canva at the end of last school year when my students were doing an animal unit. So they wrote animal books, and then they gave a big it was kind of I guess, big presentation. Kinder came over and they read their books to Kinder. That was exciting for them. So that's why I say it was a big presentation. And then I also invited some other teachers. So I created an invitation through Canva and I emailed that to everyone who was invited to the event. So that was an excellent way to just make it look a little bit special. I could have just typed up a regular email and that would have been fine too, but using Canva was a way to just give it a little extra punch. So really, really neat. And then I also use it, again, I'm hosting my book club, which is online this week. So almost all of my questions I create in Canva and then I post it because it's just more visually appealing. I feel like that is going to catch someone's eye more than just typing a post. Just a regular post looks like any post. So I find like these are very visually appealing. So it's going to attract attention, looks nice, and I think it gets people a little more interested when they see that. So Canva is fantastic. Try it out, explore it this summer, see what you can do with it yourself, and then think about ways that you can get your class starting to use it. And I think you will love it as much as I do. Okay, my next tool, this is not a new one, and I'm really only going to mention it because when I thought, oh, well, probably everyone knows about it, then I realized, well, maybe not everybody knows about it, and I use this tool so frequently, I really think it is worth sharing, and that is Padlet. Again, you can use Padlet online, or you may use it on your iPad, and it's basically like a digital board, a digital bulletin board, and the use, it's limitless what you can do with it. When I first started using Padlet, when I first started using Padlet, we were using it as observations at our school. So teachers observe, you can sign up to go observe them, and then you go into Padlet and you just kind of, add a few comments. This is what I thought was really great. This is maybe what you can try next time. Things like that. So I feel like that was my first experience with Padlet, and I really liked it. I liked it because it's collaborative. You can open up the link. You can make the link public, but you can just open it up and you can invite collaborators or send different persons the link and then they have access to it. So I was very intrigued by this. So after that, I started using it, and I used it as a digital board to put my student pictures on, and then I would share Padlet right into Google Sites. It's compatible within Google Sites, so when you include it in there, I think it just pops up. Parents don't even have to. I didn't actually use this last year for the photo board because I just uploaded my pictures straight into my Google Sites, but because the year prior to that was when I was really dabbling in Padlet, it seemed like it was a way to add that special feature, and I really, really liked it. So parents could go onto my website and then they could see the Padlet that displayed the pictures of their children. It was really nice. I liked that. So that's one way you can use it. It is like a visual board, so, but you don't have to, you can do visuals and links and text, so there's many different things that you can do with it. I have also used it as one of those, like a dream board, where you kind of visualize the things that you want. So I have a lot of personal Padlets. This is just like personal goals where I put pictures of things that I would like to make happen in my life, and visual ways to represent my goals, and just kind of go back to that visual board to remind myself of all the things that I am working towards. So that's another way that I have used it. I have used Padlet as a way to, when I initially planned out my whole year of podcasting, I used that. So it's funny because I actually have a couple different tools that I use. So Padlet is where I have sketched out my entire year of podcasting, but it's a very very loose plans. Like month 1, it was teacher and work-life balance. Month 2 is fast forward. That's the series that we're on. So it's roughly sketched out that way. Then what I did is I went and I went to Google Keep. And now, because I've recently started to use that after Padlet, that's where I'm leaving my notes and whatnot for the specific episodes. But Padlet was where I sketched out the whole entire year, and I find it a great tool for that because each board has a lot of space. And it's a whole board, whereas Google Keep is great, but they're almost like little sticky notes where, yes, you can bring them up and enlarge them, and yes, I'm sure you could do a whole year's of planning on here, but I did it in Padlet and I found that was fantastic. And then I also use it as a place where I will keep notes, especially on the book that I am hosting this month for book club. I have links because this book that I'm hosting is from the 19th century, so I'm finding it very necessary to give the book club, different links to information about things happening in the 19th century and realism, different ways to help them understand the book better. And then that's also where when I get a good question that I want to ask, but I'm not ready to ask it yet, I'll put it into my Padlet. So, and of course, when we're thinking about students in the classroom, they could be doing those very same things in Padlet. They can, create some kind of a map. They can do a timeline. They can maybe track their own reading. There's really no limit to what can be done with Padlet. It's just a great, great resource. Then the very last thing that I want to talk about, which I've left till the end because I have made so many references to this, and I will continue to make references to this because it is my absolute favorite. It's Google Drive, but not just Google Drive, everything inside Google Drive. So I've said this many times, our school is a Google school. We keep everything in Google. I know that it is becoming more and more popular, so many of you are probably already using Google Drive, which I think is great. If you're not, I'm going to spend a little bit of time explaining why I love Google Drive so much, and then just explaining a little bit of what I do with Google Drive. So they might be some of the same things that you do. They may be new things that you don't do. So Google Drive it's almost like Microsoft Office, but in a cloud form. Everything is in the cloud. So that right there is a big positive because it's in the cloud. I can access it at any time. It used to bother me so much when I would make lesson plans or be working on a presentation and I would have to email it to myself so I can access it. And then if I made any changes in the document, I would have to make sure that I emailed it back to myself so I could access it yet again. And if I'd forgotten to do that, well, then forget it. If I'm now in a different location, I can't really do anything else with it because my newest version is saved and it's maybe at home or somewhere else that I don't have access to, and that is such a pain. Whereas Google Drive, everything you do is in the cloud, so you're just accessing that same account, and that same account can be accessed anywhere you are. It is in the cloud, which I find is what more and more of us are doing. To be honest, I do very little in Microsoft Office now, very little. When I do anything in Microsoft Office, it's typically because I'm having formatting issues with Google Drive, because yes, while I love it, there just are certain things in terms of formatting that are not there yet. But the good news is that Google is constantly updating. Google is constantly coming up with improvements to what they're doing. So because of that, it's fantastic. So I always feel that even though something is not available right now, that is probably going to be worked on. There was a time when I absolutely hated that I couldn't merge cells together within a document, and that was such a pain, because when you created a table, then you just got that basic looking table, and I felt it was very limiting. But within the last, what has it been, 2 years or so, now you can merge cells. So they're constantly updating. So anything that is maybe not quite up to what you would want, just know that you're always going to see updates. They're always improving every year. All the time they're coming out with new things. So they're only getting better and better, and having it be virtual and accessible anywhere, for me as a teacher, that's just excellent. I can work on it at school and then come back here at home and continue my work. And because everything is auto-saved, you don't even really have to remember to save it. So many of what used to be our problems with these digital creations aren't, they're just not really issues anymore. So what do I do in Google Drive? I don't know. What do I not do? I do everything. Everything I do is in Google Drive. Documents, it's just like a Word document. It's, you can do anything. Typing letters, I've typed up field trip letters, notices, my introduction letter to parents about who I am, everything and anything like that gets into Google Docs. And then I use Google Sheets, which all of this is inside of Google Drive. If you're unfamiliar with Google Drive, Google Sheets, I've recently, as of last year, started using it for my lesson plans. I'm going to share a link of an example of that in the show notes, because it's absolutely great. What I discovered was I can have on one sheet all my times, and then what reoccurs at that time, like 8 to 8:10 is always my morning routines, and then we go into our first daily 3. I do daily 5 but a modified version. We go into our daily 3 rotation. That's always the same. So I've just recreated those sheets by using different tabs. So Monday, that sheet is on Monday, and then I plug in the specific details, and then the second tab is titled Tuesday, same sheet, but the details are different. So it is so fantastic for lesson planning. Every year I think I've tweaked my weekly lesson plans, because I haven't been quite sold on any of the way and any of my designs for my lesson plans. And yeah, I'm going into 9 years of teaching, so every year, literally every year, I've changed the way I do my lesson planning, the program that I use. So Google Sheets, I love it for lesson planning. It is fantastic. So then my next favorite is Google Slides. It is just like PowerPoint. See, I'm almost forgetting all these other names. So Google Slides, it is just like using the PowerPoint. I create PowerPoints in slides for anything and everything, pretty much. A lot for math, some reading lessons, vocabulary. Anytime you need to do a presentation, basically you can do it in Google Slides. It is so fantastic, and you can insert images. It's just such a great tool. And of course, all the ways that I'm using Google Slides, students can be using them as too. Obviously my students, they don't because of their age, but students who are old enough could be creating their own presentations within Google Slides. So it works as a great teacher tool for teaching, but also for a great student tool. and you may not be aware of it because I myself recently discovered this, but Google Slides can be used for animation, which is so awesome. I've not done this. I recently learned about it and I definitely want to try, but I think this is so good, especially if you're already doing animation in the classroom. But of course, even if you're not, if you're thinking about getting kids involved in creating animation, which is really a good way for students to do stories and, in a different way than pencil and paper, which I still think obviously these are not substitutes, these are just different ways. I think it's very important that students can do pencil and paper, especially at the younger age. It's very important, but just it's so creative. And so yeah, you can use Google Slides to do animation. Basically what you do is you start your first slide, you want to find a background, and then you are going to choose an object, and then you just copy that page and paste it, and then each time you move the object slightly. So of course you could be very basic, and probably as you're just trying this, you would just maybe use one object, and then you can, once you really get good at it, have several objects and several different things happening and moving. But each slide you're going to move it just slightly, and then when you're done with it, you save it. But when you save it, you're going to save it as a website, and then you have to save it to, I think, the slowest option, which is 1000 seconds. But once you open that link, so after you get that, it generates a link and you open it up, you're going to see at the very end of that link is 1000, and that's where your second is set. You want to just delete one of the zeros, because even at 1 second it will probably be too slow. So just change it to 100. Change the link so the last number, instead of saying 1000, says 100. And then when you play that link, it will put it in a decent speed. And you can also, as you're downloading it, you can choose to loop it, so after it plays it just keeps replaying. So once you have that, it's downloaded as a website, and you've changed the number, then you can share out that link, and it's so very awesome. So students can create things like that and then share their link, and they could even maybe present on it, and that will bring in another element, speaking and listening, into this tool. So I think my kids are very young, but I've already been thinking about how to do this digital animation for my young students. And every Friday we do like a free time Friday, and I'm really thinking about more things that I can include during free time Friday, where they can do things like this, where there's an academic part of it too. I still want to keep our art station, things like that, but I think I want to include some of this where they can be doing animation. And of course, if you have any ideas, and if you have young learners, I'd love to hear. If you're doing this with your kids, I'd love to hear about it, because I'm sharing my ideas, but knowing that listeners, hopefully you're getting something new out of this, which is the whole point, but you probably have other things too that you're doing in your classroom. And I would love to hear about that, because this whole idea of the animation really, really intrigues me. For my next digital tool, I'd like to talk a little bit about a digital storytelling tool that I use called Story Jumper. And I think, I'm sure the idea of digital storytelling is not new, so I won't spend a whole lot in that. But we do know that students can produce their books and stories in a digital form, and in many cases there are many sites where you can actually then create a book from it. In fact, my twin sister, actually did that when she was honoring, I think I've mentioned that she is the manager in her accounting department, and one time she was giving an award to one of the workers within her department, and to honor her, she wrote one of these books, and then she printed it out and actually gave her the physical book. And I thought, wow, that's such a great way to honor someone. But she knew about it because I do the digital storybooks so often. So I think we know how this is really good for students, but I want to share how I use it because I have used it also a little bit differently, or at least I think differently. I really started getting into digital storytelling last year, but for my own book. So again, I'm going to go back to what I always say. My kids are so young. I always put priority over that they're actually doing, they come to me not readers, not writers, so they need a lot of exposure to the actual physical paper and pencil and a book in their hand. It doesn't mean that they don't have times where they use digital things. Obviously, they do, and I've been talking about when those times are, but my emphasis is never on that for them because of their age and the fact that they're coming in not reading and writing. So I really want to establish that first, and then later there will be plenty of time for technology. So I really view technology in my classroom as a great way to enhance the teaching and definitely enhance the learning, but they're tools that I just see a whole lot of potential in terms of enhancing everyone's experience. So I started using the digital storytelling for my own stories. Last year I decided that I was going to start the first week and I was going to write a digital story to introduce myself to the students. So I created a book called The First Day of Pre-First, just in digital form. Again, didn't print any of this out. I did not create a physical one, but I did share it with the students. And it is just so neat because I was able to put pictures in there of me and my coffee cup, because my kids end up knowing later that I love my coffee. And so it was really neat because I created a story about how I was nervous for the first day of pre-first. Again, I'm a pre-first teacher, and that's a special grade that exists in between kindergarten and first grade here in Mexico in the bilingual schools. So that's one way that I've used it. So just to introduce myself. I also created a book for kind of a spin-off from Mo Willems' Pigeon books. I did a little recreation of that about how Pigeon really wants to read a book and then don't let Pigeon touch the books in her classroom library. And I actually used this as I was teaching them about how to take care of our classroom library. So this was a book in the very beginning of the school year because it talks about how we treat our books, the things we should and should not do. And I thought I would do it in a very cute way because the kids love Mo Willems. Well, let's admit it, we adults love Mo Willems too. And those pigeon stories are just the cutest. So yeah, so anytime you're wanting to introduce them to something, just like how to check out a book in the classroom library, or how to interact with the books, any type of procedures, anything that you have going on in the classroom that they need to be taught, this is an excellent way to incorporate a read aloud and touch on whatever you need to teach them. I've also included it for math. I created a book called The Pattern Mystery. So as we were learning about patterns in this book, obviously talks about patterns and the characters going throughout the city and seeing patterns, and the students have to finish the patterns. And let's see, one other way that I've used it is when we did our community, the myself unit includes a part of community workers. So part of our unit in myself and my place in the world is understanding that our place is, these communities within larger communities. So that's where community workers gets involved in that. And I just kind of found that the books that I couldn't find one good book that touched on all the elements that I wanted to talk on. So I created one. So we all pretty much know at this point as educators that digital books are excellent for students, but they're also excellent for us teachers as well. They allow us to teach things. They allow us to incorporate other subjects. So you get to integrate your, math with language arts, or social studies and language arts. So it's such a great tool. And again, the one that I use, the program I use, it's free online unless you're going to actually publish one of these and get a book created out of it. But as long as you're just using it digitally, there is no price for it. It's free to sign up, and it's called Story Jumper. So I would encourage you to try, if you're not going to try Story Jumper, try another one and see how you can incorporate digital storytelling for your teaching. I'm going to guess you're probably already having students create something. If not, you definitely want to try that out. But I don't hear a whole lot. I don't hear teachers talking a lot about how they're using it in their teaching, and that's something that I have found very helpful, and the kids get a kick out of it because you can upload pictures, so they love it when they can see themselves in there, or if they see their teacher making a funny face. So it's really fun. With that, I'm going to go ahead and conclude today's episode. I hope you found it helpful, and I hope that you got some ideas for ways that you can use these digital tools in your own classroom. Don't forget to catch us next week on Sunday. Every Sunday I release a new episode, and next Sunday is episode 10. It's the last episode in the Fast Forward series. It's called It's Time to Worry. Literally, you don't want to miss it. We'll see you then.
Wait a minute. Wait 1 minute. Before you go, don't forget you can catch our show notes online at www.timetoteach.libsyn. That's libsyn.com. We're also on Facebook at Time to Teach. Don't forget to check out our Facebook group, Teachers for Effective Curriculum. And if you're an educator with your own podcast show, I invite you to join our brand new Facebook group, Teachers Who Podcast. Let's grow a community where we can network, problem solve, and discuss anything and everything podcast related. I'll see you there.